Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Kesubos, Perek Dalet, Chapter 4, Mishna Aleph, Mishna 1.
No.
All right. Narish and Ispatza, the Nara, the girl, literally means the girl between the ages of 12 and 12 and a half that was seduced. Bashta upagama ukanasa shalavia. The payment that the seducer pays for the shame he caused her, for the devaluation he caused her, and uknasa, and the payment, the fine of 50 shkalim, shalavia, belongs to the father. That's what Torah says. V'hatzar, batfusa. And when it comes to a tfusa, that means a girl that was violated, an that was violated, there's the payment of the pain for the pain that he caused her, and that also goes to the father. Now, Amda Bedin, she stood in judgment. That means that the Beis Din had a chance to actually, basically deal with the case and to obligate the seducer or the violator to have to pay the 50 shkalim. So Amda Bedin, she went through the judgment, Acheloi Mesa Av, before the father died, when the father was alive, when the judgment was passed that the perpetrator has to pay the 50 shkalim, Harehein Shalav, they belong to the father. Mesa Av, if let's say the father died, let's say before the payment was made, Harein Shalachen, his heirs, the brothers, will now get the money. Because once the Beis Din renders the decision, says that the man has to pay the 50 shkalim, they're now considered a debt to the father. And if the father dies before the debt is paid, it goes to his heirs, which would be the brothers of the girl. However, let's say by the time the father died, she hadn't even yet had a chance to stand in judgment. That means the father died before the Beis Din, before the Beis Din obligated the perpetrator to have to pay the 50 shkalim. In that case, Harehein Shal Atzma, they belong to her. The point is like this. The point is that when it comes to the knas, the fine of 50 shkalim, the perpetrator, does not become obligated to pay it until the Beis Din says he has to pay it. Even though he committed the act before, but the payment of the knas, the payment of that fine of 50 shkalim, he is not obligated until the Beis Din says he's obligated. So therefore, if the Beis Din did that before the father died, then it became an obligation to the father. And when the father dies, it goes to his heirs. But in the case where, let's say, even before the Beis Din obligated the perpetrator to pay the shkalim, the father died, then who gets the money then? She does, not her brothers, because since it was never a debt to the father, so they never inherited that debt. And it's a debt to the girl, and they have no control, they have no jurisdiction over her, and therefore they remain by her. The money goes to her. Now, what's interesting to point out, as pointed out here in the notes, is that all right? So the whole idea is that the knas, this fine of 50 shkalim, is not considered an obligation to pay until the Beis Din says so. But what about the other payments? The payments for the embarrassment, for the devaluation, for the pain that he caused her. When does the perpetrator become obligated for those? Also, when the Beis Din decides obligates? The answer is no. Actually, these obligations, the obligations for damaging her, are obligations that essentially take hold once he does it. You don't need a Beis Din to have to go ahead and say you're obligated for that. And therefore, in essence, it would seem that when it comes to those payments he's obligated right away to the father, even before any kind of judgment by the Beis Din. Nonetheless, from the Mishna, it's clear that we're not differentiating. We're talking about everything, and that is that the halacha is when it comes to the payments, they all get bunched together. They all go together. Even though essentially he became obligated to the other payments as soon as he perpetrated the act that he did. And it's only the knas that he actually becomes obligated after the judgment of the rabbinical court. Nonetheless, the halacha is and this is the way they bring it down here from Tosfos Yontif. This is because the Torah requires the damages to be treated in the same way as the fine, meaning the damages, the valuation, the embarrassment, the pain. The Torah says they're to be treated the same way as the knas, as the fine of the 50 shkalim. Therefore, since the fine is paid to the Nara in this case, damages must also be paid to her. Meaning, therefore, in the case where this last case we had, where she gets the money, right? She gets the knas because the father never got that debt, and therefore never was passed on to the sons. So even though essentially the other payments for the damages were obligated to him when he was still alive and should have been passed over to the sons, the Torah has them all go together. All the payments in these cases go together. And therefore, once she gets the 50 shkalim because he had died before the judgment, she gets everything and not her brothers. Okay, that is the first case of the Mishnah. Okay, let's go a little further. De bedin achalei bagra. Let's say she was judged before she became a bageres. A bageres means a girl after 12 and a half. After 12 and a half, she's a full adult. The father has no more jurisdiction over her. And therefore, some point is like this. De bedin achalei bagra. She stood in judgment. There was a judgment for the payment of the knas before she became a bageres. She was still a nara. Harena shalav. Who do those monies go to? They go to the father. Meisa'av, if the father died, harein shalach, and belonged to the brother. Once the Bezdin made the judgment for him to pay the 50 shkalim fine, it became a debt to him, and even though he died before the payment, it now goes over to the brothers. Lo yispeak alamayid badinat shabagra, but if let's say there was no judgment before she became a begeres, by the time the judgment came about, she was more than 12 and a half. In that case, who do the payments go to? Harein shel atzma. The payments then go to her. Because if it comes out that the judgment took place after she was 12 and a half, which means it came after she was out of the father's jurisdiction, then that means the father doesn't get those payments. And therefore they go to her. Only when she was judged, when she was still a nara, which is when the father gets the payments, that is when we say, okay, even if he dies before actually being paid, it'll go to the brothers. But once she's already a begeret, she's already past 12 and a half. And that's where the obligation was made on the perpetrator. That money then goes to her. Okay. All right. We'll continue the mission tomorrow from here.
All right. I'm in the middle.
Yeah. All right. So we were now talking about avak rechilas, indirect rechilas. Here's another example. You praise your friend in front of someone in a manner in which the person hearing the praises could actually come to have complaints against him. And because of that, trouble, he can get bad can come upon him. This is included in a dusting of rechilas. So that means like this. I go ahead and I start praising Laser in front of Barry, okay? And I'm praising Laser in a way that Barry says, this guy, he doesn't deserve all that praise. You know what he did to me in this time? You know what he did to me in that time? You know what happened this time? What happened that time? And that could actually get Barry, Chas v'shalom, Barry would never do it, but actually get Barry to now decide that he's going to, get back at the guy. Because here he is being praised for all his great stuff, and look what he's done to me. So you basically brought about, in an indirect way, that a person who had harmed another person in a certain way is going to be reminded about it, and because of that, may even go and react upon it. Did you tell him anything? Did you say to him, did I say he did this to you? No. All I did was praise him. I told him about the great things that he does. But if at the end of the day it comes about because of that you're now reminded about the things that he did against you, and because of that you're going to have complaints against him, then that is indirect rechilas. Therefore, Shahetiv imay balva, abenasina stuck, abeshilim schar, sachar shishilim, like karoy, v'chakayetza bazeh. You know what? So what happens? Ruvain decides to praise Shimon in front of his partner. Shimon has a partner, Levi. Okay? And Reuben says to Shimon, says to Levi, Shimon, your partner, he's a great guy. He paid me on time. He lent me money. He went ahead and he gave me tzedakah. And Levi says, oh, really? That's what he did? That's what my partner did? But whose money? Shimon can start having complaints against his shutef. You know, forget about, let's not even say he's taking money from the partnership. You know, to you, he does all these favors and he's nice to, but to his partner, he's not. That's what could happen when that could possibly happen. And because of that, it can come about any kind of damage or argument with Ruvain. Because he thinks that now he's going ahead and he's squandering his money. So therefore, these are all examples. This is an example where you got to be careful what you say. Another example he gives is, and again, one example is enough. But basically, in the case of the partner, the issue is that, look, I think in this case, the Chofetz Chaim is saying that, the partner is going to say, look, he's spending our money. He's spending our money. He's not just saying, or he's going to suspect that. When the person says to him, oh, your partner did all these favors to me, and where did he do those favors from? Exactly. What money did he use? He's giving tzedakah to people from our money, and he's doing this, he's doing that, which maybe there's nothing wrong with doing. But the partner can start complaining, oh, he's spending our money too much, he's doing things in the wrong way. And therefore, that's an example. You got to be very careful of how you praise someone, because that could be indirect rechilas. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. And they talk about